Hello and welcome to The Cutting Room, 1.21 gigawatts of movie analysis, trivia and laughs from all the right movies. I'm John and the two slackers with me are Matt.
Hello.
You're a slacker.
And Luke.
Hello.
You're a slacker.
This is part 2 of our Cutting Room episode on Back to the Future. In this part we'll be looking at the writing, the cast and the music. A whole lot to get into there, so let's start with the writing of the movie. The Back to the Future screenplay was a co-writing credit between the two Bobs, Zemeckis and Gale. They'd been writing together since their days as USC students, and this was their fourth writing collaboration. I mentioned two earlier in I Want to Hold Your Hand and then Used Cars. Do you know what the other one was before Back to the Future?
No, I don't.
No, I don't.
They wrote the groundbreaking 1941.
Oh, of
Oh,
course.
of course they did, yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking as in it was Steven Spielberg's first ever turkey in the box office.
Yeah, yeah.
So they'd written 3 films together, Zemeckis and Gale, and not a hit amongst them. 3 flops. How was their writing here, though, on Back to the Future? Luke?
I think the writing is probably the best of the big blockbusters in the decade, to be honest. It's just everything that a film like this should be for me, without being too cutesy-poo and family-friendly. There's dark and edgy moments in there, like bulletproof vests at the end, and Biff's overly aggressive behaviour, particularly towards Lorraine, probably wouldn't fly today.
Yeah.
But these elements really add the depth to the film and make the resolutions right at the end that much sweeter. And I mean, there isn't a greater sight than a subservient Biff in his green Adidas all-in-one at the end. Incredible visuals.
Oh, it's great.
Hi, Marty.
Come over. Fantastic.
Like Bobby Charlton.
But I'd say that the film is I'd say that the film's likely to be offensive to Libya and Libyans.
The Libyans!
And I don't know who thinks it's a good idea to have a mother attracted to her own son as a major plot point in the film. But that really never feels all that weird, does it? Somehow, I don't know how they
somehow
pulled
it
it off.
doesn't.
Yeah, I
I have
know.
no
yeah,
idea how they've done it, but the tone is judged just right.
Yeah.
What I really love in the screenplay are the little details. Re-elect Mayor Goldie Wilson at the start of 1985. Marty gives Goldie the inspiration when he's working in the diner in 55.
Mayor.
Twin Pines Mall turns into Lone Pines Mall at the end after Marty totals one of Old Man Peabody's pines in 55. Uncle J Bird Joy, Pepsi free. You want a Pepsi, you got to pay for it. All amazing stuff. And the setups and payoffs that happen all the way through the film, like Save the Clock Tower at the start, that comes into play massive at the end to get Marty home. Marty doesn't play or can't play at the school dance in 85. He gets rejected.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
Too darn loud. But then he does in 1955. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And there are dozens more. It's littered with them. They happen all the way through the film, and they give the film so many layers, which is why it's so rewatchable. The reason that I still feel the way that I did when I watched it when I was young, it's thrilling stuff, incredible example of writing.
Yeah, I agree. I think the writing's brilliant. I mean, like you touched on there, Luke, I've never seen a film that sets things up and then pays them off later in the film so well as Back to the Future does.
Amazing.
The first act is almost non-stop setup, but somehow you don't even notice. It should probably be jarring, but it's not. And the narrative itself is a very good concept. It's fleshed out into a great story. The unusual thing is that the main character, in Marty, doesn't really have an arc. He's basically the same at the end of the film as he is at the start. You're not supposed to do that, but I think the reason that works is because Marty doesn't change, but he does change everyone around him. George has a huge arc, but Lorraine changes too, and so does Doc by the end. They all have arcs as a direct result of meeting Marty.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of great things about Back to the Future, and at the core of it all, I think, is a script that I would say is pretty much perfect. All-time
Wow.
great level writing, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And Matt, what do you think of Bob and Bob's writing on this one?
Yeah, it's that word. It's payoff, isn't it? Because it does this so well. Because there's not just one layer of jeopardy here either. It's not just that Marty's ended up back in the 50s. He has no fuel to get back. And not only does he have no fuel, he's now interfered with his parents' relationship, so he has to fix that. But he has to fix that on the same night. He has to use the lightning storm to charge the flux capacitor, which he only has one shot at. And if he doesn't do that, then he can't get back to the 80s to save Doc's life. So the way this script just lays in level of jeopardy after jeopardy is incredible. And as you guys are saying, there's so much at stake, but the script pays them all off beautifully. It's such a joy to see all those elements click together at the end. It's like if you've ever built like a really like complicated set of Lego, it's like putting the last few bricks together and you just think, it just slots in brilliantly, and it's doing all this while making an incest subplot really funny. I mean, like incest in film is something you should only get in like a Lars von Trier film or something like that. Should be nowhere near some blockbuster, and yet it's in there and it's really funny. I do think there's a couple of elements I thought on the last rewatch like stuck out as not aging particularly well. And firstly, I think Lorraine is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You're right. Well, we'll see at the end.
We'll see.
We'll see how sure I am at the end. I think Lorraine as a character isn't written particularly well in respect to the romantic angle of the film, because I think she is essentially attracted to whoever the plot needs her to be attracted to.
Oh my God, he's a dream.
So at the beginning, it's all about Marty. She's obsessed with him, and it does a decent job of suggesting that she knows something's wrong with him when she kisses him. That kind of works, but to then immediately pretty much fall in love with George instead feels a bit convenient, because that's what the plot needs to happen there and then.
Okay.
And I think the idea that she falls for George just because he smacks out another bloke, it just makes her seem a little shallow, I think. That's all it takes to impress her. So it still kind of works because Thompson and Glover are excellent and you totally bought into them as characters. And Zemeckis is moving the film at such a pace that I just go, yeah, don't quite buy it, but I'm going to go along with it. It's fine. And the other element that hasn't aged particularly well for me is it's very materialistic in that 80s kind of way. So it's not enough for Marty to get back to his girlfriend, to his family who love him, and to save Doc's life. He's got to have a rich family now. And, obviously money is nice to have. And I get that part of this story is he teaches George to stand up for himself. And I guess with that would come more success in life. But it's just very kind of Ronald Reagan, greed is good, that Marty getting a shiny new car at the end is kind of just as important as saving Doc's life and getting back to his family. When I think if you compare this to something like It's a Wonderful Life, when George gets back to Bedford Falls, in that example, he doesn't care if he's poor, he doesn't care if he's going to prison, he just wants to be back with his family and his wife and his kids and his friends, because that's what's really important. So I think from that perspective, Back to the Future just seems a little shallow in comparison. So overall, I do think it is excellently written, but I do think there's a couple of little niggly flaws in there for me.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's fair.
I'll have them, Matt.
Okay, they're allowed, are they? They're making the cut.
Well, I think the story flows so naturally that it's hard to imagine that everything in there wasn't always in there, but some of the script changed quite a lot from the first drafts. Have you heard about any of the first drafts of the screenplay and what changed?
Not too much.
Right, well, I've got them here for you.
Okay.
So, so Marty's surname originally wasn't McFly, it was McDermott.
Rubbish.
I prefer McFly. Yeah.
Can't imagine a band called McDermott, can you?
Emmett Brown originally wasn't a doctor, he was Professor Brown.
Okay.
And he didn't have a pet dog called Einstein, he had a pet chimp called Shemp. That was changed by Sid Sheinberg, the head of Universal, who said, no film with a chimp ever made money. And Bob Gale said to him, hang on a minute, what about Every Which Way But Loose? And Sheinberg said, that's an orangutan, not a chimp.
He's not wrong, to be fair.
Subtle difference.
He knows his simians.
Well, there's this unbelievable story about the title of the film. You mentioned Sid Sheinberg there. You would think that Back to the Future, pretty perfect, pretty iconic. But one man who thought it was less than wonderful, in his words, less than wonderful, was Sid Sheinberg. He was president of Universal Pictures. He sent Spielberg a memo in October 1984 suggesting an alternative title. The title was inexplicably Spaceman from Pluto.
I think it's terrible.
Just, bad choice.
Trips
bad
off the
start.
tongue, doesn't it?
He claimed that this suggestion had heat, quotes, heat originality, and it projected fun. Heat. And that it avoided the film sounding like a genre time travel movie. So what we'll do is we'll not make the title relate to the actual film narrative, we'll make it about something completely different, and also make it sound like a crappy genre picture at the same time as well.
Yeah.
From the 50s.
Yeah. Yeah. He had some notes like, to change it to suit the title, have Sherman Peabody call Marty a spaceman from Pluto when he sees him when he goes back to 1955.
Hey, that you mutated son of a bitch!
Have Marty call himself spaceman from Pluto instead of Darth Vader from Vulcan and all that kind of stuff. Change the title of George's novel at the end to Spaceman from Pluto. You can see where it's going. He's crowbarring them in.
Yeah.
A serious suggestion as well. Obviously, Spielberg couldn't believe his eyes, and he got around it in the best way possible. He replied, saying, quote, "Hi, Sid. Thanks for your most humorous memo. We all got a big laugh out of it. Keep 'em coming." He didn't keep 'em coming.
Yeah.
Good.
Terrible.
I mean, Back to the Future is a great title as well.
it is.
Brilliant. Spaceman from Pluto is not cool, and it doesn't even make sense in terms of the film, so I don't know what he was thinking. The writing process on Back to the Future was pretty tumultuous then, but it doesn't show. Great concept, great story, great screenplay, and one of the worst script notes of all time.
Yeah.
Gotta agree,
Agreed.
surely.
We've mentioned the cast a bit already, and now we're going to go into more detail on some of them as we each pick our favourite to talk about. So, who are you going for, Matt?
Well, I'm going to go for the main man, Michael J. Fox. I think...
Why not?
Well,
Wonderful.
yeah, exactly. It's amazing how energetic his performance is here, because he is filming the sitcom Family Ties at the same time.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
So he's doing like 20-hour days, 7 days a week at times, and it did properly exhaust him.
I'll probably work until about 4:35 in the morning, and then I'll sleep until about 6 o'clock.
You know, he had a driver taking him between sets of the film and the TV show, and his driver at times had to pick him up and carry him to bed because he was just that exhausted. But you can't tell. In this performance, it's one of those where it just fits the actor like a glove. And it feels very natural. This isn't the type of performance where I feel, I think Zemeckis probably had to guide him a lot through this. I don't think it's that at all. I think Zemeckis just probably let him go. It's one of those very natural performances where Michael J. Fox just is Marty. They are one and the same. Yeah. And it's the sheer likability that he has, that youthful charisma that he has that makes Marty such a memorable character. And I think Fox needed to begin that because it kind of makes me laugh a little bit at the beginning. Like, Marty does whine a little bit when actually his life is pretty decent. You know, he's got a cute girlfriend. He's got a decent house. The family's all together, apart from Uncle Joey. He's got an electric guitar, so he's obviously not poor. He's got a really weird friendship with an eccentric old man.
Is Doc Brown like a child molester or something?
I mean, what more does he want in life? You know, so I think in the 1980 sequences, he comes across as a little bit spoiled, I think. But it's once he gets to the 50s that I really, truly warm up to Marty, because there he is, that fish out of water.
What's with the life preserver?
And he just doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And like I say, he's mucked up his parents' relationship. So he's got so many things to fix. And I think Fox handles the comic aspects of it all brilliantly. So yeah, it's a really charming, very natural, very likeable performance from Fox here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Michael J. Fox is pretty irreplaceable nowadays, but quite famously, Michael J. Fox was not the first person cast as Marty, was he?
No, he wasn't.
So Zemeckis' first choice to play Marty was Michael J. Fox. At the time, though, like you mentioned, Matt, J. Fox was working on a sitcom called Family Ties, and the executive producer of Family Ties, Gary Goldberg, wouldn't release Michael J. Fox to do Back to the Future. So Zemeckis had no choice but to go through the typical casting process, and people like John Cusack, Johnny Depp, Charlie Sheen, and Ben Stiller all auditioned.
Lorraine, lately I've come to the conclusion that I don't know anything about my parents.
And then, after Sid Sheinberg pushed for him, Eric Stoltz, who had a couple of hits around that time in Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Mask, he was cast as Marty. Have you seen the footage of Eric Stoltz as Marty from the time?
Yeah. I mean, he looks decent. He looks quite good.
Yeah, well, he's a good actor.
He's
an excellent actor.
Yeah, he is.
It's just not funny,
No,
is it?
it's not.
No.
I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Stoltz did film quite a few scenes as Marty, but the film didn't have the laughs that Zemeckis wanted. Stoltz actually said to Zemeckis one time that he saw the film as a tragedy, not a comedy, because the world and people Marty knew don't exist anymore.
Right.
And Zemeckis realised at that point that it wasn't going to be the film that he wanted to make.
No.
So,
Tragedy.
6 weeks into production, Stoltz was fired, and they went back to Family Ties. And this time, Gary Goldberg let Michael J. Fox read the script, and obviously, he said yes.
God bless you, Gary. Gary Goldberg, thank you. Praise Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, dream job status, isn't it? My dream job. They clearly believed in the material to go through that grueling schedule as well. Amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, I think Leah Thompson is brilliant at playing multiple versions of the same character in Lorraine. I think she's especially great as the middle-aged depressed Lorraine we see at the start of the film.
Yeah, boozer.
Girls these days, smoking pot, drinking booze.
The person I'm going to talk about, though, is the antagonist of the piece. Tom Wilson is the school bully, Biff Tannen.
Fantastic.
I think this is somewhere, actually, that the two Bobs got a little bit lucky with the script because, as a character, Biff, I mean, yeah, they wrote a few great lines for him.
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
But as a character on the page, I think he's really two-dimensional. He's a bully, and that's about it. But Tom Wilson just makes him come alive and leap off the page, and I think elevates him to be a genuinely excellent bad guy. He's funny, but he's still a threat, and George's fear of Biff is, like, palpable. And like Leah Thompson, Wilson plays three characters, basically. Middle-aged bully Biff, then young bully Biff, and then middle-aged wet blanket Biff.
Fantastic.
And he's brilliant at all of them.
Yeah.
Really brilliant. Also, have you heard Tom Wilson's Back to the Future song?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, it's
hilarious.
fantastic, isn't it? Magnificent.
Yeah, so over the years, Tom Wilson kept being asked the same questions by fans, so he wrote a song that basically answers all those questions, and it is really, really funny.
What's Michael J. Fox like? He's nice. What's Christopher Lloyd like? Kinda quiet. What's Crispin Glover like? Unusual. Stop asking me the question.
But yeah, Biff is a really strong antagonist, and for me, a massive part of that is down to Tom Wilson's performance. I think he's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, I watch Wilson in anything because of this performance. I mean, admittedly, that means that I'll be watching a lot of crap because he hasn't covered himself in glory after this. But he's got such a likeable screen presence, hasn't he? And despite being the bad guy.
And, well, look who you're going to talk about as your cast member.
Yeah, well, like you, I mean, it's difficult to narrow down because there are so many likeable characters in the film. I think we've got to give a big shout out to the legendary Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown.
Definitely.
Of course.
Constant source of exposition, which I like because, you know, I insist on it being very clear what's going on. But I have to say that my favourite character is George. George Peeping Tom McFly.
He's a peeping Tom.
Love him. Not for that reason, obviously.
Peeping Tom. Despite that.
Yeah. I mean, the writing of all the characters is great, and no more so than with George. At the start in 1985, he's this weaselly little fella that gets steamrolled like a cartoon character when we're introduced to him and Biff slapping his oily hair, hilarious. But by the end, he's this athletic, successful writer, looking great, an amazing family, and the writing beats that get us to this point, I am completely bought into. There are these incredible character moments. He's just so very funny. Even just physically, he cracks me up. Hilarious when he's getting kicked in the pants in school with the kick me sign on his back. Ha, ha, ha. Real mature guy spinning around with his hair flying everywhere. I mean, it's potentially psychologically damaging bullying behaviour, but nonetheless, you know, hilarious.
Yeah, you love it though.
And yeah, it's great. And the moment when Marty catches up with him after school, why do you keep following me around? Just really, really funny moments, like from his performance point of view. The writing's great, but Glover gives this incredible offbeat spin that adds a load of nuance to the character of George.
Yeah, he was in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Crispin Glover, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, he was.
Some amazing dance moves.
Crazy dance moves.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, as brilliant as Crispin Glover is here, there was quite a bit of friction on set between him and Zemeckis over a few things. So Glover wanted the 47-year-old George would see at the start of the film to have his hair standing straight up on end, like Henry Spencer in a razor head. The problem was they'd already started shooting. So Zemeckis said, we can't do that, Crispin. It won't match what we shot yesterday. And Glover said to him, Brando never matched. Don't mention Brando.
And I think he did.
Yeah. Also, Zemeckis said that he constantly had to rein Glover in because he would usually do whatever he wanted in takes, which, with deadlines to hit, must have been frustrating as hell for any director.
Yeah.
There was one time where Glover said to Zemeckis that he thought the McFlys shouldn't be well off when Marty gets back to 1985. You read this one, Matt.
Just like you.
He said, love should be the reward, not money.
Zemeckis got really mad at me when I said this, and he yelled. Yeah,
I'll not mention it as Zemeckis than if I ever mention it. If I ever meet him. You know what you should have done?
And Leah Thompson told a story about going to Crispin Glover's house one night so they could practice some scenes together. When she got there, she found that all the rooms were painted entirely black, and Glover just wanted to paint a volcano with her. And that's not a euphemism. He literally wanted to paint a volcano with her.
That's amazing. I mean, it is such a shame that he went in the direction that he did, because he's a bit of an oddball.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's happy with it, but I'd have loved to have seen him in more mainstream films, because he's just amazing in this. I mean, he didn't even come back for the sequels. And the reason for that is because he was offered only half of what Leah Thompson and Tom Wilson were offered. There was rumoured that he wanted the same amount of money as Michael J. Fox, but he's disputed that. He said he felt he deserved less than half of Leah Thompson and Tom Wilson. Instead, they used a mould of his face from the original and built prosthetics around actor Jeffrey Wiseman's face to make him look like Crispin Glover, and then, obviously turned him upside down as well. That helps. And Glover was understandably unhappy about this and filed a lawsuit, which he won, and that prevented this kind of thing from happening again. But yeah, I mean, Glover, a strange little fella. He currently lives alone in a 15-room mansion in Prague. Just like that. Very strange.
Yeah, whatever the reason was, he was given the chop from the sequels. The casting Back to the Future then, pretty great all across the board, and surely the definitive movie role for every one of them.
Yeah,
perfect
absolutely.
casting.
Incredible.
Music isn't something that we always single out when discussing a film, but Back to the Future features classic tracks start to finish, an orchestral score provided by Alan Silvestri, and a range of pop music, including the film's signature track, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
So what are our thoughts on the music in Back to the Future? Luke?
Yeah, well, I just want to talk about that orchestral score that you mentioned, Alan Silvestri. Just a real highlight, composed by Silvestri's 100-piece Out of Time Orchestra that he named him. Out of Time Orchestra, fantastic, lovely choice.
Lovely.
I just love that there's a range of emotions in the film, and Silvestri somehow is able to keep up with it, and he elevates every scene with his inclusion with his music. There's a big difference between the main theme, the moments of threat with Biff and Lorraine in the car, to the emotional moments with Marty and Doc at the end. Zemeckis' direction to Silvestri was that he wanted something big for the score. Silvestri claimed that there were no real big moments like sweeping vistas or panoramic scenery, but he thought the archetypes were big, like friendship and heroism. So he applied the big moments in the score to the emotional beats, and you can feel that all the way through for me.
I totally agree. I think the score is absolutely superb. One of my favourites, very triumphant and bombastic, a bit like a John Williams type score, and I think this is probably the best John Williams type score that isn't written by John Williams.
For me.
And Matt, how do you feel about the music in the film?
I love it. I love everything about the musical choices in this. The score's great, but I do want to mention the pop songs as well, because if you think of like the three different versions of The Power of Love, because obviously Jennifer Rush had one, Frankie Goes to Hollywood had one called that. Huey Lewis, definitely the best of the three, isn't he?
It's incredible.
Just an absolute. It's
a monster.
It's just good vibes in a song. Totally puts a smile on your face every time you hear that song. It's an absolute banger. But I do want to mention the period songs as well, because I think they probably work the best in the film. Because you've got Earth Angel in there, which is just absolutely sublime. And I've got a friend who saw Back to the Future at the Royal Albert Hall when it was accompanied by an orchestra playing along. And he wrote a review for his blog, and the way he put it was, when the orchestra struck up for the end of Earth Angel, everyone promptly burst into tears. Just total punch in the heart, isn't it? It's a beautiful song, beautifully used. And then it's such a genius move to follow that up with Marty playing Johnny Be Good, because after such an emotional moment, I think you just need a bit of comic relief. You just need something to like release you from that, and that's where you get with this ridiculous OTT version he's doing. He's giving you the duck walks, you're getting the Pete Townsend windmills playing behind his head like Hendrix. It's just an amazing song to use, and I think my favourite thing about it is when he's finished and he hands the guitar back to Marvin. It's the way Marvin looks at his guitar, like, how did he get it to do that? Where did that sound come from? Absolutely amazing. So yeah, the pop songs in this, they're used as good as any pop songs have been used in any film, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, regarding Johnny Be Good, I know that Chuck Berry, who owned the rights to the song because he wrote it, he withheld the rights to it until the day before filming, which must have been stressful for Zemeckis. And did anybody else ever think that was actually Michael J. Fox singing when they were a kid?
I've always thought that.
Because
I always did.
Yeah,
convinced.
It sounds just like him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not him though. It's a guy called Mark Chapman, who was a singer in a band called Jack Mack and the Heart Attack. But it wasn't a coincidence that Mark Chapman sounds like J. Fox. So the music supervisor on Back to the Future was called Bones Howe.
Right.
He put out a casting call to find someone who sounds like Michael J. Fox when he sings. Mark Chapman saw that ad, practiced to sound like Michael J. Fox, auditioned, and got the part on the back of it. So it was intentional to sound like him.
Class.
Excellent. J. Fox was taught guitar by Paul Hansen as well. He was in loads of rock bands in the 80s, and he appears in Marty's awesome band, the Pinheads, as well. Too darn loud, obviously.
I think he's... he's like the rhythm guitarist on the left-hand side, I think.
Right.
The music in Back to the Future then, great orchestral score, great pop music, both pretty integral to the success of the film.
100%.
And that's all we have for part 2. It is to be concluded though, so you should definitely not miss the final part 3 where we talk about our highlights from Back to the Future and rate the film out of 10.